Hi, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and you are watching PBS Books. PBS Books is pleased to partner with Poetry in America and the Association for the Study of African American Life and History for this evening's event. Thank you for joining us. Poetry in America draws students of all ages into conversations about poetry. Each half-an-hour episode offers the viewer a fully immersive experience in hearing, reading, and interpreting a single poem. Athletes, poets, politicians, musicians, architects, and more join together with host and Harvard professor Elisa to experience and share the power of poetry. Let's watch a trailer.
This poem literally makes me go back into my past.
The first two lines, I mean, what kind of hook is that?
When we put it in our heads, we're in the fastest roller coaster we've ever been on.
If this was the only poem you had ever read, what would you think poems do, and what would you think poems are for?
Poetry in America actually began airing on PBS stations across the country last week. So check your local listing. Also, you can go to pbs.org or poetryinamerica.org. This evening, we are discussing and delving into an amazing poem by Evie Shockley. You can say that again, Billie, which was inspired by a song by Billie Holiday. Shockley will be in conversation with historian Robin D.G. Kelley and actress LisaGay Hamilton to discuss racism, violence, and artistic tradition in the American South. But before we begin, we always like to thank our library partners, more than 1,800 strong across the country, as well as numerous PBS stations for sharing this important content with all of you. But most importantly, we'd like to thank you for joining us this evening. Thanks for being here. So now the moment you've been waiting for. It is my extraordinary pleasure to introduce poet Evie Shockley. Evie is a poet and scholar. Her most recent poetry collections, The New Black and Semi-Automatic, both won the Hurston Wright Legacy Award. The latter was also a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize and the LA Times Book Prize. She has received numerous additional awards and fellowships. Shockley is a professor of English at Rutgers University. Welcome, Evie.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here. It is my pleasure to now also introduce historian Robin D.G. Kelley. Robin is the Gary B. Nash Endowed Chair in U.S. History at UCLA. His books include Thelonious Monk, The Life and Times of an American Original and Freedom Dreams, The Black Radical Imagination, as well as many more and many articles. We're thrilled to have Robin with us today. Welcome, Robin.
Thanks a lot. It's great to see you. Great to be with everyone.
So glad to have you here. And to also join us for the conversation, I'm pleased to introduce LisaGay Hamilton. LisaGay Hamilton has had an illustrious film career, including roles at Astria, Vice, Beautiful Boy, True Crime, Beloved, 9 Lives, Honey Dipper, and more. On television, Hamilton can currently be seen on Hulu series The Dropout. She's also has notable credits for House of Cards, Chance, The First. She's also well known for her regular role on Emmy Award-winning The Practice. In addition, she has acted on Broadway, and in addition to the New York Shakespeare Theater Festival. She's earned an Obie Award as well as many others. Welcome, LisaGay.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Thrilled to have you. And last but certainly not least, it is my honor to introduce Elisa New, who is the director and host of Poetry in America. She is also the director of the Center for the Public Humanities at Arizona State University, director of Verse Video Education, and the Pal M. Cabot Professor of American Literature at Harvard University. She created Poetry in America, a PBS series with the goal of bringing poetry into everyone's living room. We are so thrilled to have Elisa. Welcome, Elisa.
Hi, Heather. I'm thrilled to be here and so excited to be talking about Evie's wonderful poem tonight with
Well,
your
we're
other
so
guests.
happy to have you. And before we
Yeah.
jump into the content, I was just really hoping that you could talk a little bit about Poetry in America, how it began and where we are today.
Well, Poetry in America is a multi-platform initiative that endeavors to reach people in their classrooms, as we say, and in their living rooms with poetry. We offer a PBS television series that, as you kindly said, has now just gone into its third season, but also courses for high school students and teachers and students of all ages, short courses, long courses, summer programs that allow people to explore themselves as well as to explore the great discipline of poetry. And I'm really excited about this upcoming season, episode 4 of which is Evie's poem.
Well, I think what is so wonderful is you're able to craft these incredible conversations with people most of us know already, right? And what's so neat is then they're talking about a poem. Sometimes we've never heard of the poem. Maybe we've heard of the poet, but they bring it alive to us, and you do it, I think, in half an hour, right? In half an hour, which is incredible. So we're so excited to be able to actually hear from our guests and from you. Just a reminder for all audience members out there, if you have a question, don't hesitate to put it in the chat. At the end of the conversation, we will be asking audience questions. So now my goal is to watch a clip from season 3, episode 4, which is the focus of tonight's conversation. And after that, we look forward to the conversation that Elisa is going to lead. Have fun.
Thank you.
Blood tells the story. Do you salute Old Gory? Were you born on a white horse or a black ass? Everything depends upon the way your rusty life flow writes.
This is a bedroom story, right? This is a hidden story. This is a story that's not in the public domain, and it's the truth.
One of the concerns of the poem was to draw a line from the antebellum period through the Jim Crow period and right up to the turn of the century.
Blood tells the story. Do you salute Old Gory?
Old Gory is pretty slapstick, I'll have to say.
So do you salute, now you're thinking of Old Glory, but it's gory.
Right.
So she's taking and twisting and presenting.
And Old Gory, also a reference to Old Glory, which is not the Confederate flag, but the Union flag.
Mm-hmm.
So
We are implicating the North as well. This isn't just a Southern story.
Okay, that clip, I think, may begin to give the flavor of this extraordinary poem by Evie Shockley, which we'll ask Evie to read a little later in the program. I'd like to open with a question to Evie that I think might need a little more context. And so, hi, Evie. So great to see you. The context I would offer is this. Evie has written a poem that is showcased in this episode of TV that somehow tells the story of everyone Black and everyone white in America, and it's a poem that fits on one page, and as Robin Kelley said in the clip, it tells the truth. The poem tells the truth. I would like to talk with you, Evie. You are both a poet and a scholar, and as we'll see a little later, a singer, a singer too. what kind of truth can poetry give us, and how, let me think about, I'm going to give one teeny bit more framing. A poet takes the materials of history and spins them into something. An actor, we'll hear from LisaGay, an actor takes print on a page and has to turn it into something. Even an historian, as Robin knows well, has to take material and turn it into something. Where does truth sit in that? And I'd like to hear first from you as both poet and scholar.
Oh, wow, what a great question. I think in some ways as a poet, I sit between the historian and the actor in the way I approach truth. I don't feel like it's my responsibility to set down facts in a poem. The truth for me would be the emotional truth, the social truth, the truth of an experience that I have, that I can relate through art to the way I hope many people have experienced this world. And if I can get to that feeling that taps into how many people feel about the history that we live in, that's the truth that I want to get to. It's not about a linear story. It's not about sort of the who, what, when, where, why. It's drawing connections between lots of different cultural moments, objects, figures that create a kind of a web of experience.
Yeah. As you were talking, Evie, I thought about just the first line of your poem. You can say that again, Billie. The poem begins, Southern women serve strife. Now, there are words there that refer to things we might think are clear denotations, and yet and that's an assertion. Southern women serve strife. All the ways in which it is true, it becomes the work of the poem.
You have to leap in, just ground yourself in a moment. And
I like that. I like the idea that you've just offered, that poets, that truth can be gained in a leap, right? That there's a risk on both sides, right? You have to participate in making that truth. I also really began to actually learn new things about you when you said you sit between the actor and the historian. And I wonder if we could have LisaGay and Robin join us here, actor and historian. Ta-da, here they come. I realized as I was asking this question that I asked you all this question when we discussed this poem those many months ago, this question of truth, and you started it, Robin, because you said it's the truth.
Right.
So let's hear about the historian's truth, where neither you nor the poet just puts down the facts and the obvious. You have to craft and arrange and choose as well.
Right. Well, I think Evie said it perfectly. That there's an emotional truth that cannot be captured. In fact, sometimes is erased or hidden behind facts, or another term might be data, you know. And the idea that there's some kind of objective truth that somehow can be quantified is the very opposite of poetry. Poetry is Aimé Césaire talks about, is a kind of spattering. It is a leap. It is a kind of leap of language where even the words themselves are often inadequate. And so I take my lead. I mean, you know, Evie may sit between the historian and the actress, but in the end, I follow the historian. I follow the poet. You know, I always follow the poet to try to figure out, you know, how to understand, you know, the struggles of humanity, you know.
And LisaGay gives the most extraordinary readings. I mean, we in Poetry in America, one of our conventions as it's developed is that we parcel out the poem among all of the readers in order, honestly, to make clear that these are communal readings, in both interpretive readings and also performances, and we want everyone to embody. But I have to say, LisaGay is really better at it than most of us, and I'd like to hear about that. Maybe about your encounter with this poem, and how it feels to embody and project through your voice someone else's text. It's the most largest question I guess you can ask an actor.
Words on the page are the most important thing. I pull out my dictionary and immediately looking up those words and what do they mean. What's, I think, extraordinary about this program is that you spend that half hour with the poet. And boy, oh boy, if I could hang out with Shakespeare for a little while, or I could hang out, you know, I used to hang out with August Wilson a little bit, but if I could hang out with that writer, what do they really mean? And so with Evie's explanation and everybody else's conversation about the poem, I really get the sense and really begin to understand the depth and the meaning of the poem. And as the artist, I can then take that knowledge, take my own emotional experience from reading the poem and do a reading of it. It made me think of all the different arts that could be combined with Evie's poem. It could actually be the Billie Holiday song playing in the background, a dance company and someone reading it, an orchestra performance, having someone read it. There's so much musicality in the piece that it can morph into just an endless opportunity to give it all kinds of colors and shapes, both with the actor and with other artists.
You said, I'm going to try this a different way. You said, what a privilege to sit with the artist. And here we have her. I wonder, though, you know, I think Evie's reference to that leap, which feels like a leap into the darkness, you know, poets go hauling language after them, and sometimes, or they seize on it and they're not even necessarily sure what they mean by it. And I have heard from poets that other people's interpretations can surprise them. And I'm wondering, Evie, if any of the interpretations you heard in the show surprised you, or felt, you know, surprised you on the upside, surprised you. We said, what? How could that be?
Not in a bad way, but in a great way. Like, I always feel like I learn what are when I get the chance to hear about what other people have done with them. And that's the thing about making art with language. It's it's, you know, crafting and I've got thoughts and I want to try to create a scene, a mood, bring in different ideas and thoughts. But ultimately, it's language, and we all do what we do with the language. And so it was a huge pleasure for me to hear, you know, where Robin went with it, where LisaGay went with it, and the other guests on the episode. It was fascinating to hear. I think someone mentioned "Get Some Strange," which
that I was about to ask you about that.
I've never heard that phrase before.
So I'm going to offer some context here. The word "strange," of course, is the first word of the song we know of as "strange fruit," and that word, as we'll see in a few minutes, is embedded in Evie's poem. And as a set of interpreters in the episode begin to talk about this word "strange," let's see, strange, how strange, brown vassal on a bed of green needles. One of our interpreters says that there's a Southern expression used for having sex with someone to whom you are not married called getting some strange. And that, for me, it took my breath away. It opened up darker, scarier, also, you know, vernacular, you know, I don't know, pores in the poem that I hadn't heard before.
It's one of those things that language is carrying so much baggage, so much history in it, that these kinds of associations, while I learned something and was surprised by it, I wasn't surprised to find that there was something like that in it. And I wouldn't be surprised if the subject of this poem and the kinds of very unwelcome sexual encounters that it contemplates weren't behind that phrase that I had never heard before, right? Wouldn't be surprised at all. The language really carries the history.
There's something more profound than I think I'm going to have the presence of mind to get my head around in what you've just said. That is that our language is itself a kind of archaeology of our history, and that when a poet peels off a stratum and pats that into a poem, who knows what will come with it. There is a moment, you were talking about disturbing or unwelcome sexual encounters, which is what this poem is about. It's about rape, and all forms of sexual appropriation, including that, as Robin points out in the episode, that is imposed on wet nurses, or was imposed on wet nurses. There's a moment in the poem early where you, in a sort of jocular, the jocular voice of the poet, refers to fully armored knights that come clinking from the womb. And those knights, to you all, Robin, there's so many knights there that we might be thinking about, and I'm not sure we talked about them in the episode, so people watching this might hear something new.
Right. So should I jump in on this?
Please.
So before I answer that question, just one thing about the word "strange." You know, language is always moving. I mean, because texts, so much of Evie's work is about drawing from texts and transforming those texts using puns, which of course is the highest form of humor, but also devastating puns. But the original poem that A. Meeropol wrote was not called "Strange Fruit," it's called "Bitter Fruit." So bitter fruit becomes strange over time. And in fact, just like LisaGay was saying, the original poem was set to a choral arrangement that Earl Robinson, the great composer, did. So there's even before Billie Holiday gets it, it is actually put to music. When we get to this amazing line about femmes bear fully armored knights clinking from the womb, I immediately thought of Ida B. Wells and her critique of chivalry, and chivalry serves as a kind of pedestal, right? But it's also a jail cell for white women in some respects, and that is that every Southern white man is presumed to be to have the armor, to be the knight in shining armor, to protect the white womb from interracial sex, from consensual sex across the color line, and the cost of crossing that color line is death, is devastating, And so I saw all of that in terms of the preparation and reproduction of the violence of Southern chivalry, laid out from the moment of birth, all the way up.
With also, of course, the hint at the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Exactly. I think of Connecticut Yankee and King, or Mark Twain seems to be, and we're not sure how much freight any of this, and even as I am supposed to welcome new viewers in a second, but what we haven't yet said, although we've alluded to it, is that this poem is devastatingly witty. This poem is about the most terrible subject and the stain on American history, and it's really so clever and delightful. And that's interesting. I am going to pause for 1 second and say that I'm Elisa New, the creator of Poetry in America, and that you are watching PBS Books. I'm here with Evie Shockley, Robin D.G. Kelley, and LisaGay Hamilton discussing Evie's poem, You Can Say That Again, Billie. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, and we hope to ask the audience for questions shortly. In order to set us up for the next phase of this discussion, I thought we'd show you another little, another piece of the episode. Let's run the clip.
The poem uses the first 2 lines of Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. I wanted to draw on the way that we emotionally attach to certain songs. And so I sing those lines because the poem speaks back to the song. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. You can say that again, Billie.
Now, now I would love to invite you to read the whole poem for us, Evie, and then we'll continue our discussion.
Sure. You can say that again, Billie. Southern women serve strife. Keep lines of pride open. Trees are not taller than these broad vessels. Femmes who bear fully armored knights, clinking from the womb. But a knight in whining ardor means Black woman compelled. How strange, brown vassal on a bed of green needles, ingests the fruit of Georgia, let that gestate. But begets no child of the South. Blood tells the story. Do you salute Old Gory? Were you born on a white horse or a black ass? Everything depends upon the way your rusty life flow writes. Sut penmanship. If it leaves blonde scribbled across your scalp, hooray! And blue inscribed in your eyes, praise the cause. Your literary blood wins the gene pool. It's a prize. Hide your mama. Baby, at worst, you're a bestseller. Compelling octoroon. But the bestsellers are dark and earthy, humid places where fears take root and grow up to be cowboys. Yee-haw.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Evie. And in a moment, we'll have, oh, I think everybody's coming. I think everybody's coming back. What a beautiful reading of the poem. What struck me, and I think I'm going to ask LisaGay and Robin to just jump right in. What struck me was how little difference in a way there was between your singing the lines and speaking the lines, and the affinities between the poet and the singer, and between poetry and sort of the elevated art of poetry and popular song. I was hearing that compatibility or that kinship between these art forms very, very strongly. Mm-hmm. Robin, LisaGay, could you, I mean, why don't we just analyze the beauty of Evie's reading?
LisaGay, you should go first.
Oh, well, what I love more than once, it's so wonderful to hear you read it live, given you are the poet and you are giving me the language in which I need to digest and keep up with you. So I love how you give the proper weight and humor and juxtapose against this very horrific yet extraordinary history that we all have been through. So I love the poem, mm-hmm. but I also love how you read the poem, and the words are so important that, and there are puns, and there's night, and it's just wonderful.
Right. No, I concur, in fact, that your reading of the poem is worthy of Billie Holiday herself. Mm. Because Billie Holiday was famous for phrasing. I mean, among many, many things, phrasing. And there's something about the way you take about 10 different stories, 10 different interventions mm-hmm. in this history, mm-hmm. and then cut them and paste them together mm-hmm. with pauses in between that allows us to see them all intertwine. They grow like roots out the ground and intertwine, much like, a magnolia tree, mm-hmm. and we could see it and feel it. And so it's very, now I really encourage people to watch the episode, to get to buy all your books and to read the poem very carefully, because just to see the way you use language, 2 words, compelling octoroon or bestseller, are so rich with image and story.
I absolutely agree, of course, and was feeling that I was feeling, as I listened to the two of you, how this poem, more than many, really demands to be looked at on a page and listened to. It's without looking at it, you will not guess the secret, the amazing secret of the way that the first line of Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit, or of Abel Meeropol's Bitter Fruit, is written down the left-hand margin of the page, nor, as Robin pointed out, will you see the way in which this poem looks like a kind of mysterious quilt of journalistic scraps of history, of historical incidents, rendered poetry with gaps somehow suturing them.
Fragments, really.
Please, yeah, I'd like to hear more about that.
That's how we get our history so often, is in these fragments that slip through the cracks sometimes. I feel we're getting, I think what Robin called hidden histories. And the poem, I just really appreciate all the things that Robin and LisaGay have been saying. The poem really tries to bring together stories that are fragments of the one long, big, and often dark American story. I was thinking about Ida B. Wells when I wrote this poem, and how Strange Fruit as a song connects Ida B. Wells's work on anti-lynching with what she called the threadbare lie. I mean, men were being lynched purportedly because of the threat to white womanhood, but it was Black women whose sexual violation was being was constant and unprosecutable, unrecognized in law. And so, how do you suture all of those fragments together? This poem was just, one attempt to try to bring these various aspects of our history into one place that we can see on one single page.
There are, I feel we should give our viewers a little more sense of what some more of these fragments are. I mean, William Faulkner is in this poem. The plot of a whole novel, of one of his whole novels in a way, is in this poem. Willie Nelson is in Southern, country music. Cowboys are in this poem. It's the middle passage is in this poem. It's and how the poem, you use the word vessel in, and the poem is itself a kind of overloaded and yet an overloaded vessel that still doesn't contain all that could be in it, or maybe even all that. I didn't know the Ida B. Wells, and I didn't know that you'd had that in mind.
Well, I mean, there's a lot in the poem, because it does connect so many moments before the Civil War, during, after, and all the way to the present. I mean, this close to the anniversary of last year's insurrection, we have to all be still thinking about what kinds of forces are mobilized by that memory or nostalgia for a cause that caused so much pain for so many, right? And William Faulkner was struggling with the aftermath of that in his novel. I thought it was a wonderful way to bring him into this. I was reading Toni Morrison on Faulkner at the time I was writing this poem, and to think about America through the lens of novels by two writers who were both so just virtuosic. That was something else I wanted the poem to do, to just connect itself, like I said earlier, in a web to the songs, these novels, these cultural icons, and find a way to invite as many readers as possible to sit and think about this history and its impress on the present.
You give Billie Holiday a special place in the, I mean, she's in the title. You can say that again, Billie. And so she's in plain sight, although we might not know, which, we might be asking which Billie, but only, I wonder if many people, I bet there are some people who read the poem in your book, and don't notice that strange fruit is arrayed down. And what does that say to us about like the duration of reading a poem? Have we read it wrong if we missed that the first time? What do we gain by having missed it the first time? Because you surely knew that this was a little sneaky.
I thought about italicizing those words to make them stand out. But in the end, I decided against it. I felt like what was important was that you could notice it. The title gave you a chance to notice it. And those words are so much a part of our culture that, like you said, sitting with the poem over time, it could surface. But ultimately, if the song was a really good spine for the poem, it wouldn't matter if you went back to if you noticed the way the poem was using it. Maybe to mention Billie Holiday in connection with this kind of interracial sex would just conjure the song up on its own is one possibility. I also like to think that there's no wrong way to read the poem. I have to say that LisaGay's reading in the episode was one of my favorite parts. Just that's the moment where you really get to see what training can do for how to deliver these lines. There are multiple interpretations that are possible. And I like to write in a way that leaves room for interpretation.
And LisaGay pointed out the live, there's something different about live performance that we don't get. Do we or don't we? When we read, I'm trying to think about the where live performance sits in the reading of this poem rather than the hearing. And it's very wonderful the way you allow us to think about that, right? This poem is not just text on a page. We hear it, right? And maybe we hear Billie Holiday, or maybe we are in danger of not hearing Billie Holiday. There's a story this poem tells too about artists forgotten, artists who are filed, who don't count, who don't have the respect that perhaps William Faulkner earned in his day. Robin, as I recall from the episode, and others will see, you had thoughts on this.
Right. No, I was thinking also in terms of some of the language and how it narrates more than just what's in the spine. In other words, there are many kinds of strange fruits. And I thought about, for example, the question of class, race, and gender, and how, when you write, Evie, about a knight in winding ardor means black women compelled, how strange, brown vassal on a bed of green needles, which is about normative nature of rape of black women, that is just normative. And you lay that out. And then as you go on to talk about subpenmanship and Thomas App, Thomas Sutpen in Absalom, and how it's about class on the one hand, where he's this striver growing up poor, wants to be fully Southern, and ends up mining that attempt to become Southern because he ends up in a marriage with a mixed race woman and abandons his child. And then later in the poem, when you say, when you compare Billie Holiday's struggles with Faulkner's success, and how it's tied to issues of race and privilege, despite the fact that we all could agree that he's a genius, you then tie it all together with "It's a Prize, Hide Your Mama, Baby," which comes after the quote of "Blood wins a gene pool," but then "Hide Your Mama, Baby" references Charles Bon, the discovery later that his white son befriends a black son and the white daughter falls in love with him. All these things that Faulkner does, it's like you do Faulkner and you do Billie Holiday and together, and then create this amazing piece that is on a half a page. That's amazing. I mean, that's a feat right there. It's genius.
This poem, okay, I have to admit that when I put together a season of poetry in America, I've decided now there's got to be one poem we read and we're reading it for a lot of reasons, but one of them is for sheer virtuosity. It's for, this is a poet, Evie, you're going to have to put up with this. This is a poet who knows her stuff and is operating at the at the peak of her powers, and knows how to do wordplay and knows how to do internal rhyme and knows how to do allusion, and isn't doing it to show off. It's clear, but the virtuosity of this is extraordinary. And if you want to sort of see, what it is to see a poet on the flying trapeze, you could read this one. And to tell a whole cultural history of white America and Black America, Southern America and Northern America. That is really, really something.
If I could just add that what I also love about the poem is that there is the Black female perspective and the Black female experience. And there is a gift in that I think that Evie has given all women who are interested in history, but in particular Black women. The fact that Evie is a Black woman is important to me and is significant in the telling of her poem and the hearing her read the story. That's just something I just thought of, that just about what it is to be a woman through this history. And she gives you that, the good and the bad.
Yeah. And to sound in the way Evie does. It's the story she tells about women, but it's the badass way she sounds too, right? The vulnerable and grieving, but not missing anything, right? The acuity, the taking names, right? There is a historical chronicler here who's not going to let you forget that she is there, and the power of that is really something. I'm being told whenever there's a break in the chat that I should close. I am very sorry to do that. I think that's what I'm supposed to do now. Thank you all, Evie Shockley, Robin Kelley, LisaGay Hamilton, for joining with me to make a television episode upcoming on Poetry in America. It will air in most cities across the country 3 weeks from now. Heather, are you back to do questions or just say goodbye?
So I think we've run out of time. Actually, I know we have run out of time. The conversation has been incredible, and I just want to I'd like to also thank everyone, especially Evie, for your poetry, your creativity, your thoughtfulness, for the web that you've created and how concise you've been able to make it, but also how complex. We were honored to have Robin, Kelley, and LisaGay Hamilton sharing your perspectives on race, musical tradition, also bringing to the importance of it to women. And Elisa, thank you for guiding the conversation with your thought-provoking questions. I do want to echo what Elisa said, which is please tune in on your local PBS station to the whole season, but especially to this episode. You will not be disappointed. It will be thought-provoking and it's fun, which is so important. And I think the thing I love about poetry in America is it's unexpected, and the complexity of it. It's just so wonderful. So thank you all for being here and for joining. I want to remind all PBS Books viewers out there that tomorrow we partner with the American Indian Library Association to bring you children's trailblazer Native author Cynthia Leitich Smith, who will be in conversation with State Senator Mary Kanish Poden at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Don't miss it. So from PBS Books, it is my pleasure to say good night and happy reading.